You're never going to be able to give yourself what you need to honor your desires if you feel crazy for having those needs and desires. When our life tells us, when we get a wake-up call that something in our life needs changing, we could feel crazy for having those needs, for having this sudden change. Others in our life are going to make us feel like we're crazy too, because they benefit from us staying small in many circumstances. Think about how many people benefit from you not having boundaries, from you not advocating for what you need. It's scary for a lot of people to see us change, and we're gonna need to realize we are not crazy for going after a life that we need. These needs, these desires, they might feel abrupt, but they are not. They've been percolating below the surface for quite some time, and we've been numbing them. We've been hiding them with drugs, alcohol, shopping, sleeping, other destructive behaviors because they've been scary. I'm here to tell you that once you honor those needs and learn that you are allowed to have them, your life will change. I'm Matt Gerlach. Welcome to episode 1 of Matters of the Mind, Rise to Your Worth. I empower high achievers to overcome shame, anxiety, and burnout by looking inward and cultivating self-trust, ultimately leading to a life of fulfillment, alignment, and the ultimate abundance. I spent my entire life thinking something was wrong with me until my early 30s. I started receiving wake-up calls and my physical health deteriorated so badly that I would have bet $1 million I'd not live to see my 40th birthday. I looked inward and realized that underneath all the outward success I had, there was a traumatic childhood that hadn't been dealt with and needed repairing. I felt inadequate and realized that I wanted more from my life, but felt like I was crazy for going after it. I healed, and I don't feel anxious or depressed at all anymore. I know life isn't linear, and it might throw some curveballs my way, but I've learned to cultivate the self-trust I need to believe that I have the skills and abilities to get through whatever life throws at me. Now, I like to say, I'm as cool as a cucumber. So 8 years ago, my life sent me a big wake-up call, and I was admitted overnight into the hospital. I felt chest pain and shortness of breath, checked my blood pressure, which read 190 over 110, and rushed to the emergency room. The doctor kept me overnight, thinking I might be having a heart attack, and it scared me. When I was discharged, I was seeing tons of doctors. I was seeing a cardiologist, a general doctor, a therapist, of course, a head and neck surgeon, and even an addiction specialist. Finally, I wound up in a neurologist's office, and he said, "Matt, I've seen what you're going through 1,000,000 times. You're suffering from plain old anxiety." While it felt liberating and I was grateful that I wasn't dying of cancer or a tumor like I thought I was, it meant doing more of the same, and what I was doing wasn't working. Working with my therapists and coaches, I realized I needed to make changes in my life to support my needs. This anxiety, this depression, it was all trying to tell me something. My personal and professional relationships needed changing, and I needed to say what I needed from them, but I realized I was terrified to do so. I went back and realized that in 5th grade, I was abandoned by all of my friends. I'm gay, and by 5th grade, I started to show signs that I was different from other boys, and they let me go. More devastating, though, was that I held this all in. I was afraid to tell my parents, and I was afraid to tell other adults because I didn't know what would happen if they found out I was gay. I was worried I could suffer consequences so severe I could even die. At home, I acted out, and I was punished for my behavior, and it further led me to believe something was wrong with me and that I was just crazy. I thought I was flawed. Essentially, it stayed with me my whole life. And until my life started sending me wake-up calls, I had no idea that beneath this all, I hated my needs and thought something was wrong with me for having them. When this all was happening, I was mostly surrounded by people who cared about me and people I could be myself in front of and say what I needed from, but I was too afraid to. I went back and worked with my therapist and realized that this disdain I had for my needs had been percolating beneath the surface my whole life, and I never was able to advocate for myself fully. I was never able to set boundaries appropriately. I wasn't living a life that made me feel fulfilled, and it wasn't aligned with who I really was. To be honest, I didn't really know who I really was at this point. When I started advocating for my needs, they were mostly honored, but it made me feel crazy asking for things I'd never asked for before. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to learn. There were relationships that did need to change because I wasn't living a life of fulfillment. There were situations that I'd gotten myself in that I needed to get myself out of. Boundaries are difficult, and I don't really think they ever go away. I don't think it's ever really one day that we've set all the boundaries in our life we need to set and we're done. The more boundaries we set, the more things in our life we learn that we are able to set boundaries for. And it's quite liberating, but it's also scary and it takes a lot of work. The thing that most people don't realize about boundaries is that there's an immediate benefit to setting them. Once you tell somebody no or say, I'm not doing that anymore, you're getting yourself out of a situation that's feeling pretty bad. You start to feel less resentment. You start to feel proud of yourself. This all happens pretty quickly by getting yourself out of a situation by setting even just one boundary. The long-term benefit of setting boundaries is that the more we set them, the more we're building a muscle to set boundaries. And that is what changes our life. Once you start setting boundaries, you realize that unlike our childhoods in many cases, there's able to be conflict that's not catastrophic. We're able to say no to something and it's not going to necessarily end up in a blowout. And if there is a blowout because of it, we learn that that's not because of us. If you're setting a boundary and somebody has a blowout because of it, that's on them. That's not on you. And you learn that you are able to advocate for yourself and your life starts to get really, really good because it becomes in alignment and it becomes fulfilling. And eventually it even becomes abundant. I've set hundreds of boundaries over these past 8 years since I started learning that I wasn't crazy for having my needs. And it started out so difficult. Now I look at some of these big boundaries I'm setting and I'm seeing that they are 10 times harder than some of these ones that felt so difficult, but yet these harder ones feel easier because I've learned to flex that muscle. I've learned to grow that muscle. My life has changed in so many ways from learning that nothing is wrong with me for having my needs, that I'm not crazy for having desires that make me feel good. So, when it comes to giving yourself what you desire and honoring your needs, I'm asking you to remember a few things. Number one, there's nothing wrong with your needs. Who's to say what's okay with your needs and what's not okay with your needs? If you're in a career that doesn't feel good, it's okay for you to need to change that. If you're in a relationship with somebody that's hard on you and you have vocalized these boundaries, if you've told them to please stop and they're not doing it, it's good for you to want to get out of that. If you need help, which a lot of us do, it's very hard to make these changes without some sort of support. You can talk to your therapist or a coach. Honestly, even talking to a friend or a family member is a huge help. It's okay to get feedback. It's good to get feedback. I'm a huge advocate of journaling. This morning, I had something to sort through. I wrote it on paper. I was shocked how much clearer it got just by getting it out of me and getting it either onto paper or talking to somebody else about it. If these needs remain suppressed and if you don't honor them, your life will go one of two ways. You'll end up in the hospital like me, which quite honestly I am thankful for. Because the other way it could have gone, I could have lived my life skating just north of rock bottom and never learned that I deserve to have a life that feels good and is full of fulfillment, alignment, and abundance. The next thing to remember about desires and needs is that things simply change. We're growing if we're lucky, and our needs should change also. Sometimes we're fortunate and we have people in our lives or situations in our lives that grow with us. There's this saying I love, and it says that people are in our lives for reasons or for seasons or forever. Some people grow with us, some people are in our lives just for a short season or just for a temporary reason. That's okay. When we don't allow for things to change, when we don't realize that things change, we can again end up in that place where we're denying our needs. The final thing I'm asking you to remember about your needs and desires is that advocating for yourself is the only way. It's the key to living a beautiful life. Nobody's coming to save you. No one is going to come one day and say, I see through your passive aggressiveness. I'm going to start giving you things you need. It's on us. It's our responsibility as humans to say what we need. I know what it's like to grow up believing that if I say what I need, it's going to end up with a blowout or me getting hurt. It's not like that as adults. We are in control of our lives. It is our responsibility to get ourselves out of relationships, out of situations where we are not able to advocate for our needs. And remember, when we advocate for our needs and someone respects that, we get an immediate payoff. We get our boundary met. Similarly, when we advocate for our needs and someone doesn't respect that, we learn to get ourselves out of that situation. I'm not saying it's easy to leave situations, and change is undoubtedly difficult sometimes. Ask for help. Ask for a friend. I love journaling. Getting it out of you will help you sort through difficult situations. I want to leave you with this. Nothing is wrong with you. You are not crazy for your needs. I think it's so much better to honor them and to get yourself out of a situation so you can live this life of alignment and fulfillment and eventually abundance than it is to stay in a situation that's comfortable or even uncomfortable. We are supposed to be growing, and our needs change as well. Thanks for hanging along. Please press the subscribe button. I'll be here every week. Go to my website and you can sign up for my weekly blog or request a free call. I offer one-on-one coaching and would love to talk to you.